Thank you. All right, thank you. All right, so welcome to our 25 by 2025 roll call. I'm so delighted to have you all join us. It's been a lot of fun to know what your pets' names are. So we got a little bit of that happening up on the screen right now. Also really wonderful to see some of the chats happening in the Zoom chat. So at any point, if you have any questions or any comments that you want to share, I am certainly open to you shouting them out. I am also happy to have you drop them into the Zoom chat. I know Johanna is going to keep an eye on the chat for us, make sure we answer any questions by the end of our time together. But I'm going to be sharing some information with you, but also really, really hope that you feel comfortable sharing any information that you have with us. So would also love to know where you are joining us from today. I want to know who is in Morristown, New Jersey, and New York City, and New London, Connecticut. And no, you actually don't have to call yourselves out, but you are very near to me. So I am about 15 miles outside of New York City in a little town called Tapan, New York, about a mile from New Jersey. So you folks are very close to me, and I'm wondering if New London, Connecticut is one of our friends from Safe Futures joining us today. So super cool to see where y'all are coming from. I also see Columbus, Ohio in the Zoom chat, Sacramento, California, and of course, most of our staff members who are joining us from RedRover are in the Sacramento, California area, with the exception of one of our staff members who is down in the Bay Area. So lots of California folks. I see New Mexico, Texas, Oregon, Denver, Missouri. Awesome. Very cool to see you all joining us today. As I mentioned, this is our 25 by 2025 roll call. We're going to talk about our movement, about our 25 by 2025 movement. We'll go over the issue. We'll talk about why pet-friendly programs are such a benefit. We're certainly going to talk about what role you can play in that. We're going to leave you with a bunch of resources and next steps. But before we go on, I, of course, need to introduce myself. We heard from some of our RedRover staff members just a few minutes ago, but my name is Katie Campbell. I am the president and CEO here at RedRover. I've been with RedRover for about 8.5 years now, and have really done most of my work within this domestic violence world. And I do come from the human services world before RedRover, and so I have a lot of passion and enthusiasm for this work. And so I'm delighted to be sharing our update with you on how our 25 by 2025 movement has been going so far. So quick question for you. This is not a quiz question, but you can consider it good practice if you would like. Were you able to attend our kickoff call last August? And I do apologize for the typo. Perhaps I was thinking about an icy cold beverage when I was typing that in, but would love to know if you attended our kickoff call. Yes, no, not sure. I am also very much a husky lover, so that may not be the first time that we see a husky picture throughout our time together. So we got 7 no's, 2 yeses. Perfect. Awesome. All right, we got 8 and 2 now. So great. So what I'll do is we'll kind of give an overview so that we're kind of all at the same place in terms of why we feel that this campaign is so important. But we're also going to make sure to share some updates with you and that progress update. So I think we have a good roadmap for today. So what is 25 by 2025? Ultimately, it is our goal to help make sure 25% of domestic violence shelters in the US become pet friendly by 2025. So this is a important project that RedRover and Greater Good Charities have taken on. Unfortunately, our friends at Greater Good Charities couldn't join us today, but we are very much in this work together. And we're receiving some very generous support from PetSmart Charities for this work. We really created this campaign because we know that there's a lot of power in community. We at RedRover started granting in the domestic violence space back in 2007 with our Safe Escape grants, where essentially we help cover the cost of boarding for pets while pets are in, or while their pet parents are in their domestic violence shelter. And then in 2012, we created the Safe Housing Program. And so that's essentially where we give larger grants up to $60,000 to help a domestic violence shelter create a pet housing program. And we quickly realized that it wasn't enough just to give the money, but that we could really play a deeper role and a bigger role in walking with organizations through that process. And so that's where we really came to realize that we could do a lot to help create this community of support for domestic violence organizations, and helping to connect domestic violence organizations to each other. We know that's an important part of it. And so that really is where this campaign came out of. Back in May of last year, we did a soft launch of this at the Humane Society of the US's Expo event. So primarily animal shelter focused. And then we had the pleasure of really officially kicking it off at an in-person event at a NOVA conference. So this is the National Organization of Victim Assistance. So we were able to officially launch the event there in late July, early August last year. And our friends from Greater Good Charities and our supporters from Purina, the Purple Leash Project, also joined us to really kick off that event. And so really, really exciting. And we think it's growing and continuing to grow since that time. Really quick definition piece so that we all know what I'm talking about from here on out. What is a pet housing program? So this comes from our Don't Forget the Pets project. And this is basically how we define pet housing programs. So we break them up into two different bigger categories. One is on-site housing or co-sheltering, and that's essentially where pet parent and pet are staying in the same location. So for us, this would be staying at a domestic violence shelter. This is what we mean by being pet friendly. We also know that there are a lot of other pet housing options that we lump into another category called offsite housing. And essentially, this just means that pet parent and pet are in two different locations. Often we see that the pet might be housed at an animal organization. It might be housed at a boarding facility, maybe at a veterinarian's office, or it could be housed in a foster-based kind of program. So this is what we mean by pet housing programs, generally on-site or off-site. For the context of our discussion today, we're really focusing in on that on-site housing or co-sheltering. So really keeping pet parents at the same space at the domestic violence shelter with their pet. And we're going to talk about why this is so important throughout our time together today. So first question, again, it's not a quiz question, and I'm very sorry, they only give me two options. So let's solve the age-old question, are you team dog or are you team cat? And I see a dog vote in Zoom chat. As promised, there's another husky picture for you. So that's Cheyenne, who's no longer with us, but we affectionately referred to her as Jerk Dog. She came to it honestly, but she was absolutely a wonderful dog. Vicky says both. And then that is my cat, Oliver, who may very likely make an appearance at some point today. So team dog or team cat. All right, so 8-4. Not as skewed as I sometimes see it. Why am I making you answer this question? Mostly because it's a reminder for me to talk about what kind of pets we mean when we say, hey, you should really keep pet parents and their pets together. We get this question, we get asked this question a lot. And most folks are like, well, you mean dogs and cats, right? And yeah, absolutely, we mean dogs and cats, but we also mean fish, and turtles and snakes and goats and chickens and horses and cows and even ducks. When we did actually hear a really wonderful story from one of our domestic violence shelters about how they actually housed some ducks of a survivor. So, really, I just want to point out that when we think about people and their animals and their pets, and them, feeling that pets are family, pets may take many different sizes and shapes. They're going to be all different kinds of species. No, this does not mean that we would expect a domestic violence shelter to be able to house a horse on site, unless, of course, it was a mini horse who is a service animal, but that's a totally different avenue that we won't go down today. But when we support an organization through this process, we work with them on setting up those backup housing options. And so when somebody does come in with an animal that they aren't able to house on site, they're going to have those backup housing plans in place so that we can keep everybody safe and sound. Okay. So why become pet friendly? If you've spent any time on our website, some of this information is going to make sense to you, but I directly pulled it from the website. Pet-friendly shelters remove a key barrier for survivors to escape abuse. We know that approximately 50% of domestic violence survivors will delay leaving an abuser. This does come from a lot of the foundational research dating back to the late 90s, early 2000s, and really focused on, at that time, survivors that were able to or had left an abuser and were living in shelter. So primarily women who were living in domestic violence shelters, and so smaller sample sizes. So most of this research was looking at the experiences of anywhere from 12 to 25 survivors. We've had some survivors report to us through our Safe Escape grant program that they lived in their cars for 6 months with their pets before they were able to access a safe housing boarding grant for us. The ASPCA also released a study back in 2015 that said that 25% of domestic violence survivors who had left an abuser but had left the pet with the abuser ended up returning to that abuser because the abuser had used the pet as a means to get them to return. And we also know that between 22 and 57% of unhoused women report that DV was the immediate cause. So we absolutely know that not being pet friendly really does create that barrier to safety and healing. So first question for you, I just told you that 50% of survivors will delay leaving. Remember, you don't have to use your real name. And remember that the more quickly that you answer correctly, the more points you're going to get. Okay. So question number 1. What percentage of survivors indicated that keeping their pet with them factored into their decision to seek shelter? So this is for a more recent study from that 50%. Was it 33%, 56%, 68%, 82%, or 97%? And I'll tell you where this study came from in just a moment. All right, 97%. I think we're going to stay at zeros for this question. It's all right. We got five more questions. 97% of roughly 2,500 domestic violence survivors who were polled a couple years ago, I think the study came out in 2021, said that keeping their pet with them factored into the decision to seek shelter. I'm going to refer to this PALS report a few times throughout our time together. It's really, really important piece of data for us because it's a much larger sample size. So it's 2,500 domestic violence survivors. It was done in partnership between the Urban Resource Institute in New York City and the National Domestic Violence Hotline. And so when folks were contacting the hotline asking for resources and services, they were asked about their experience of pet abuse and domestic violence. And so we see a much larger sample size. And we also see folks before they were potentially able to leave, or maybe they had left. And so we're really just, I think, getting a better understanding of what it means to experience domestic violence and animal violence at the same time. Okay. So foundational research said 50% will delay leaving, and then this recent research tells us that 97% have factor into that decision to seek shelter, whether or not they can take their pets with them. I did pull out, we have a lot of quotes from domestic violence shelter advocates, from survivors, from donors. And so I have pulled in a couple of quotes in these slides, and I'll read them all for you. For my client, it was the difference of staying in the DV situation or getting out, as she would not have left her dogs behind in that situation. For her, knowing that her dogs were safe was as important as her own safety. And this is coming from one of the domestic violence shelter advocates that we worked with on a Safe Escape grant. So second reason why pet-friendly shelters are so important is that they can really break the link between the abuse of pets and the abuse of people. If you haven't checked it out yet, I really encourage you to go check out the nationallinkcoalition.org. This is a quote from the coordinator of that coalition, Phil Arco. And they really pulled together amazing information related to the link between human and animal violence, as it pertains to animal violence, domestic violence, child abuse, and also elder abuse. He put it really simply when he said, when animals are abused, people are at risk. When people are abused, animals are at risk. Again, referring back to that PALS report, 48% of those survivors said that the threat of harm to their pets was a worry to them. They said 37% of them said that the abuser had threatened to harm or kill a pet. 29% said the abuser had actually already harmed or killed a pet. And 76% of those survivors said that they had already noticed changes in their pet's behavior because of the abuse. And so we know that both the human and the animal entities in these violent situations are feeling the effects of this abuse. From one of our domestic violence survivors that had reached out to us, they shared, this project saved 2 lives because I wasn't going to leave my husband without my dog. Okay. Third reason for pet-friendly shelters is that they can strengthen the connection and trust between survivors, their pets, and shelter staff. I think this is something that when I started at RedRover back in 2016, I knew that this could be a positive, but I think this is one of the positives of pet-friendly shelters that has come out as a bit of a surprise. And it's a surprise for a lot of the domestic violence shelter staff that we talked to. They knew that they were going to remove a barrier. They knew that they were going to keep people safe, but they didn't know how much it was going to help them increase their staff morale. Just that simple idea of hotline intake staff not having to say no to a survivor when they say, "Can I bring my pet with me?" Like, that's just been an incredible positive for them. Also, in that process of recognizing a survivor's entire family, so if there are human children, if there are animal children, being able to recognize that entire family and welcome that family into services has truly just been a wonderful way to build that trust, to build that empathy, to build that compassion with those pet parents, with those domestic violence survivors. We hear from a lot of the domestic violence shelter staff that having pets in shelter really just kind of takes the stress level down for everybody. It's the pet owning folks, it's the non-pet owning folks, it's the staff. And they've also really realized that pets can be an amazing social lubricant, an amazing conversation starter. Think about how many times you might open up and talk to somebody when you're walking around the block, walking your dog, and you see somebody else walking a dog. Or if you're passing somebody on the sidewalk and they have a dog, think about how many times you engage with them around their pets. People really like talking about their pets. And so a lot of domestic violence shelter staff say that, when a pet parent has that opportunity, to talk about their pet, share their name, what they like, what they dislike, what their personality is like, it's an amazing way just to again, build that trust with that pet parent and really continue that conversation. So I'll tell you a really, really quick story related to this conversation piece, and it kind of leads into some of our other reasons for pet-friendly shelters. But there is a domestic violence shelter in Connecticut, which is why I was asking who is joining us from New London, Connecticut. And they were, and they might be the only, although I think there might be one other pet-friendly shelter in Connecticut now. But they were definitely the first domestic violence shelter to become pet friendly. And we actually had the opportunity, RedRover joined Greater Good Charities Rescue Rebuild program to go up there and actually create their pet friendly spaces at the domestic violence shelter. And so we had asked the executive director, what made you want to do this? What made you take this this leap into becoming pet friendly? And she said, well, there's a story for that. Let me tell you what it is. Oh, awesome. So great to have you here, Megan. What happened basically, and I am paraphrasing, although I have most of the details are correct, Megan, so don't yell at me later if I get anything wrong. There was a survivor and a human child, and they came into shelter, and they brought their dog with them, and they were not pet friendly yet. And so the shelter staff were kind of faced with this decision, like, do we keep this family here with their dog, or do we need to ask them to leave? And so, of course, the folks that say futures are amazing, and they're like, we're going to figure it out. We're going to make this happen. And this is often how domestic violence shelters go down this path, is they're faced with a survivor who has a pet or won't come in without their pet. And so they face those two roads, right? So part of Safe Futures strategy for this pet was to set up a safe space for the dog in one of the group rooms, like one of the staff rooms. So at the same time this is happening, the little boy, who I think he was about 7 years old, he's really pretty shut down. Like, he's not talking to staff. He's not opening up in counseling. I don't think he was talking to mom a whole lot either. And so that's kind of where this little boy is at. Well, one day they happened to do the little boy's counseling session in that group room where the little dog was. So what happens? Well, the little boy starts talking to his dog, like turning to and talking to his dog. And so the shelter advocate notices this. And so she starts talking to the dog. So not looking at and directing questions or a conversation to the little boy, but to the dog. The little boy starts responding to the dog, right? So now that this little boy feels safe talking to his dog, shelter advocate can talk to the dog as well. The little boy discloses all of the emotional, physical, and sexual abuse that he had been experiencing at the hands of the abuser. So Naz, the shelter advocate, hears this via the little boy. And now the staff are like, got it. Now we know what happened. Now we know how to move forward. Now we know how to support this family. So fast forward a short period of time, the little boy is thriving. He is so engaged in services. He's so engaged around the house. I think they had to make up a junior volunteer title for him because he was just doing so much around the program. Family gets into long-term housing, right? Family continues, I believe, to come back and support the program. Wonderful story, right? Okay. So I ask you all, if the dog had not been in the room on that day, would the shelter staff have been able to figure out what the little boy had experienced and how they needed to support the little boy? I kind of tend to think that domestic violence shelter advocates are amazing and they would have figured it out, but it wouldn't have happened as quickly if the little boy's dog hadn't been there with him, if he didn't feel safe with him. And so what does it mean whenever we're able to help folks move to their own safety, to their own healing more quickly? It means that we're opening up more room for more families to come through. So I think this is an amazing story of, building that trust, building that empathy by just bringing this family in and recognizing that this dog was a member of this family. And then being able to build that trust and that compassion and empathy with that little boy simply by conversating through the little dog, right? So pretty amazing. I will share a really, really cool update. And we actually went back to Safe Futures in September, and we kind of just did like a little refresher training with them. And we had the chance to talk to Naz about this situation. And Naz gave us a little update. And I will just share, and I've told Naz that I would share this, that she is not a pet lover, not an animal lover, does not have animals at home, doesn't want them at home. And she is the biggest advocate of pet-friendly housing because of this exact story right here. So in September, she shares this update with us that little boy, that little 7-year-old boy, just finished up his internship at Safe Futures over the summer. So he did a little summer internship there at Safe Futures and is continuing to thrive. And it's exactly because they were a pet-friendly shelter and they accepted and recognized that entire family, that this family was able to find that safety and healing moving together. So Megan, to you all in Safe Futures, you all are heroes and rock stars, and thank you for embarking on this work. Really, really amazing. I tell everybody about that story. The other thing that I want to share with this is the sentiment, my cat was my home. So this was a sentiment specifically shared by a domestic violence shelter that I encountered on a domestic violence shelter build. And so she had experienced domestic violence. She's come to a place where she found her own safety and healing and then wanted to give back. And so she actually joined us for a domestic violence shelter build. And she shared a bit of her story with us. And the sentiment that really stood out to me was that she said, my cat was my home. She said, you know, I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't move forward if I didn't feel like I had my home with me. And that was very much my cat. This is also a sentiment that I often see through folks that I meet via My Dog is My Home. So they traditionally started out as helping homelessness shelters become pet friendly as well. And so I just went to their 10-year celebration in New York City just a little while ago. And Alex, I actually saw you there. And so they, as part of their art exhibit, actually had some of the cardboard signs up that people experiencing homelessness had up when they were asking for money. And quite a few of them said, my dog is my home, my cat is my home. And so I just really want this to just kind of settle in with folks. That home isn't 4 walls for everybody. You know, it truly is their family members, right? So question 2 of 6. Megan, I love it. That's awesome. All right, question 2 of 6. I see folks logged in. What's the #1 challenge or barrier that organizations face with creating a pet housing program? What do you think? Is it funding? Is it cost? Is it space? Is it allergies? Is it fear of pets? Is it liability insurance concerns? What do you think their #1 challenge or barrier is? All right, there you go. 2 of you got it right. Secret is actually all 5 of these are 5 of the top 7 challenges and barriers that organizations share with us. So anytime we do a training, whether it's with domestic violence shelters, homeless shelters, or animal shelters, we ask this question. And so we literally have probably close to 2,000 responses now. And so all 5 of these are in the top 7, but space is absolutely #1 for most folks. They don't think that they have the space to create pet housing programs. But I promise you, we have the support, we have the solutions to help through all of those challenges, because there really are resources available. There's grant funding available to support this kind of programming right now. So as I mentioned, support is available for those challenges. RedRover teams up with Greater Good Charities Rescue Rebuild to provide something called the Don't Forget the Pets Project. We offer free training, workshops, and presentations. You can sign up for one-to-one coaching. That's available for domestic violence shelters, animal shelters, homeless shelters, and really just help guide folks through that process of creating a pet housing program. We have sample forms in the document library. Folks can even download our training handbook for free. It is a long read. I will be very honest. I think we're up to close to 75 pages now, but it really walks folks through the process of why it's important, to the importance of collaboration, to physical design, to policies and procedures and fundraising. So there really is a lot of information in there. And then folks can also take a deep dive in our video library. So we have what we call a deep dive video series, and that is basically short little videos. Most of them, aren't longer than 3.5 minutes, where we take some sort of a question or a theme that has come up often for us. And we kind of talk folks through the basics of it, like how do you choose what kind of privacy fencing, how do you choose ground cover, do you do mulch, do you do gravel, do you do grass, even deep dives on things like collaboration and training. So lots of information in there. We also, when we have them, we will post recordings of our past trainings and webinars. So lots of information available at the Don't Forget the Pets website. Website is don'tforgetthepets.org. You can follow us on social, and it's all absolutely free. Okay. We also have funding opportunities, of course. So I mentioned a little bit earlier, we have our RedRover Safe Housing grants. Those grants are up to $60,000. They're reviewed every March 1st, June 1st, and September 1st. So the team is starting that review process for June 1st right now. And then our friends at Greater Good Charities Rescue Rebuild also have renovation grants. So those grants are a little bit different in that it's not generally a cash grant. When you get a renovation grant from Rescue Rebuild, it means that they are driving up in one of their tool rigs with their staff. They're volunteers, sometimes volunteers from RedRover, and they're actually going to create those pet-friendly spaces for you. You can see lots of examples of those pet-friendly spaces at the Don't Forget the Pets website as well. We pulled some numbers just from the launch of 25 by 2025. So we went back to August 1st, and we wanted to see how many grants each of our organizations had provided since that time frame for just new on-site programming. So this is helping domestic violence shelters become pet friendly. So between our organizations, we've provided eight safe housing grants for just over $328,000. And then Rescue Rebuild has provided 4 renovation grants for $313,000 since August 1st. So just since August 1st. And then that is picture of us actually down in Georgia, making a pet-friendly space. So that you see behind you, Johanna actually got to join us on that one. Those are what we call pet retreat rooms. So this is basically a shed that has been converted into 3 different pet retreat rooms. So the rooms are made to accommodate either dogs or cats, but you can, put other animals in there as well. They each have a dog door, they each have a comfy couch, they have a TV. And so the idea here is that since everybody's on the same property, but since pets aren't staying in the actual physical rooms with the pet parents, we want to make them really comfy and accessible so pet parents will go out there and hang out with their pets. It's a really great model if you really need to separate pet parents and pets on the same property. But it's a great model because it is comfy and it helps maintain that human animal bond. So definitely lots of pictures that you can find on the website. Our final reason, number 5, pet-friendly shelters allow pets and people to heal together. So question number 3, this one might be the hardest one of all. I'll give folks just another moment to get logged in, refresh your screen. If you're not seeing the question come up, a lot of times just hit that refresh and it'll come up for you. All right. Question 3. How many minutes do you need to spend with the dog to lower cortisol levels, lower your stress? How many minutes do you need to spend with the dog? Is it 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 45 minutes, or 60 minutes? So again, how long do you need to spend with the dog to lower your stress? All right. 10 of you got it right. Nice job. Let's check out the leaderboard. Let's see if we're going to have some movement up at the top. Okay. All right, there we go. Absolutely. Spending as little as 5 minutes with a dog can decrease cortisol levels. What does it mean when we decrease cortisol levels? It means that we're decreasing anxiety, we're lowering heart rate and blood pressure. We're increasing the production of B-endorphin, so we're lessening depression here. We're increasing oxytocin, which is beneficial in helping anxiety, depression, autism, and even irritable bowel syndrome. We're also increasing dopamine by stimulating learning and attention. We're also increasing motivation. We are helping to regulate heart rate, blood vessel function, kidney function, lactation, sleep, and mood. So we're doing all this good stuff just by spending time with the dog, right? And I'll give you a little secret. There was another study that was done, not as scientific, so this is why we don't put it on the slides, not as scientific, but a group of college students were getting ready to take an exam. And so some folks went in and they swabbed their cheeks to measure their cortisol level before they were going to take the exam. So swab cheeks, of course, they had higher cortisol. They were stressed out because they were about to take an exam. Next step, they walk a dog in through the classroom, just walk. Nobody actually got to touch the dog. All they got to do was see the dog, walk in the room, walk back out of the room. We're talking like a minute, right? Of just seeing a dog. Okay, folks come back in, swab the cheeks, drastically reduce cortisol levels just by seeing a dog, right? So science tells us 5 minutes, but we actually know it's much less. Think about you all and your pets. You know, a lot of the research is related to dogs, especially related, you know, to like our veterans and dogs. But just think about your own pets that you might have and how they help you release some stress, lower some cortisol, as I see Tanya's kitty crawl into her lap right now. Okay. All right. Question 4 of 6. Another one for you. I know, back to back. Back to back. Okay, so we learned 5 minutes, lower cortisol. Okay, we're going to go back to our PALS report and find out what our survivors said. What percentage of survivors indicated that their pet's emotional support and physical protection are significant in their ability to heal and survive? Was it 57%, 64%, 73%, 88%, or 91%? How many survivors said, I need my pet to heal and survive? What do you think? There you go. 10 of you got it right. Well done. Let's check out the leaderboard. Oof. All right. Here we go. Absolutely. 91% said I need my pet to heal and survive. Okay. This is a long one, so I'll read it out to you. She spent weeks isolated in her room, some days unable to even get out of bed. She was lonely and depressed and very worried about her pet, who was in the custody of a close friend. Once the rebuild was complete, so we went and created pet-friendly spaces at this DV shelter. Once the rebuild was complete, the resident brought her dog into shelter with her. Once they were reunited, the resident was less depressed, came out of her room, engaged with other residents, and eventually obtained stable, safe housing for her and her pet. Not only did the presence of this Chihuahua change the demeanor of this particular guest, but the overall environment of the shelter changed. Everyone in the house benefited from a dog snuggle when they were feeling a little low. The presence of an animal made the shelter feel more like a home. Okay, right? Go Maine. So those are our good friends up at Safe Voices in Maine. They were the first pet-friendly shelter in Maine. They are not the only pet-friendly shelter in Maine now, but good friends of ours and huge advocates of the pet-friendly movement. All right, so question 5 of 6, nearing the end. What percentage of domestic violence shelters in the US have on-site housing? What do you think? Now that we've talked about how important it is, where do you think we are? Are we at 3%, 10%, 17%, 25%, or 62%? Hopefully you can rule out one of those percentages just because you're here for the 25 by 2025 campaign. Roll call. Excellent. Well done. We're not quite at 25 yet. That is not the big announcement for today, sadly, but that's all right. We'll talk more about that in a second. Well done. Yeah. So where did it all start? It all starts somewhere. So I wrote down some notes so that I can remember dates here. Back when I started in 2016, we were at roughly 6%. That's best guess. That was according to the research, the data that we had at the time, according to our safeplaceforpets.org website. We are at roughly 6% pet friendly at that time. Fast forward to 2019 when we joined with Purina for the Purple Leaf Project, and we were at roughly 10%. So 10% of shelters were pet friendly at that time. Okay, then let's fast forward to, let's go to January 2023. We were at roughly 17.14% of shelters that were pet friendly at that time. Okay. And then let's jump to August of 23, which is right around the time that we officially launched the 25 by 2025 campaign. Even though we were kind of working a little bit on this before that, August of 2023, we are at 18.65%. So that's where it all started. We back in, I want to say January 2022, we partnered up with domesticshelters.org. And so we have a data sharing partnership with them. And so that's where we're now able to really track a lot of these numbers and keep an eye on things. So where are we at right now? Just this month, we got our numbers from them and we're at 19.03% of shelters that are pet friendly at this time. So you're like, great, these are wonderful percentages. We still have roughly 6% to go. What does it mean in actual numbers of shelters? So we have roughly in the US 1,823 total domestic violence shelters that provide emergency and transitional housing. So 1,823 shelters, total number of shelters. In 2016, 110 of them were pet friendly, 110. Now that we're at 19.03%, 347 shelters in the US are now pet friendly, right? So pretty exciting stuff. Of course, we still have roughly 109 to go to get them to be pet friendly. But that's a pretty big growth to go from 110 in 2016 to 347 right now. And so that's 347 shelters that are pet friendly, according to domesticshelters.org, our partnership with them. So what is your role in all of this? Certainly I would encourage you all to learn more about this issue. I mentioned the National Link Coalition earlier. The National Coalition Against Domestic Violence also has some great information around what domestic violence is in general, but also what it means to experience domestic violence with pets. I would really, really encourage you to just continue the conversation, to have what I call light bulb moments with people. So I'll share with you, I'm a lifelong animal lover. My mom was the executive director of our local humane society, so always had animals around, always an animal lover. fast forward to, the beginning of what we'll call my professional career, and I'm working with families experiencing domestic violence, families at risk of homelessness. And I did not put those two things together. I did not know that there was a link between human and animal violence. I didn't know that not being able to take your pet with you might prevent you from seeking shelter and safety. And there are a lot of people who haven't had that light bulb moment yet. I had my light bulb moment when I saw the job posting from RedRover, and I'm like, right, it makes total sense. I would also not be able to leave an abuser if I couldn't take my pet with me. And so I really, really encourage you, just have these conversations. There are a lot of folks who need to have those light bulb moments. And I would also really, really encourage you to raise awareness. So unfortunately, there are a lot of domestic violence survivors who also don't know that pet housing programs exist. And so it's really important to raise that awareness. Find those resources near you. So there are a couple of resources up on the screen that I think are really important. Again, domesticshelters.org is our data sharing partner for that. So it's a directory of domestic violence shelters in the US and Canada. And then you can filter out for who has an on-site program, who has an off-site program, okay? The National Domestic Violence Hotline does actually have a directory of resources, pet-friendly resources. The key here, though, is that when a survivor contacts the hotline, they do need to say that they have pets or ask for pet resources, okay? And then, of course, we have Animal Welfare Institute Safe Havens Mapping Project. So similar to domesticshelters.org, it is a directory of programs. However, it is specifically a directory of pet housing programs, so on-site and off-site, okay? All right, question 6 of 6. I did tell you that one of your most important jobs is to raise awareness, right? Okay, so last question. For all the goods, for the prizes, how many survivors were unaware that some DV shelters accept pets? So this is from the PALS report. How many survivors were unaware that pet housing programs existed? Was it 18%, 32%, 45%, 72%, or 83%? What say you? And there you go. 5 of you got it right. Okay, so here's the deal. I'm going to click forward to the leaderboard. We're going to get a quick shot of the top 10, and then it's going to pull out the winner. Let's do 3 winners. So top 3 folks, your job now is to message Tanya and tell Tanya if you want the leash, right? The cat collar or the bandana. You're going to tell her what you want, and then you're going to give her your mailing address, and then we'll get it out in the mail. Sound good? Tanya, you ready? Okay, all right, let's do it. Leaderboard. Sakura, we'll see if you stay in the lead. I don't know. There were a lot of fast fingers on that one. Oh my gosh, Beyonce for the win. All right, so Beyonce, Sakura, and Frosty, your job is to reach out to Tanya. If you're having trouble with the Zoom chat, I will share my contact information in just a minute, so you can also reach out to me and I'll make sure you get it. And there you go. Tanya also just dropped in her email address, so you can reach out to Tanya in that way. So those 3 folks, that's your work for right now to get your prize. All right, so 72% unaware that pet housing programs were even a thing. So remember way back when we said 97% of survivors said that keeping their pets with them factored into their decision to leave. So 97% said it's important. And at the same time, 72% of those folks didn't even know that a pet housing program was a thing. So this is a big gap. So not only do we need to create the pet housing programs, we also need to make sure that folks know that they exist so that they can find those services, right? You can absolutely show your support for the 25 by 2025 campaign. We've got these downloadable badges. You can put them on your website. You can put them on your social media. There's a different badge for, wherever you might be coming into this campaign, We also have an amazing toolkit that you can download if you haven't downloaded it already. It's got sample language for you for social media. It's got letters to the editor. It's just got, really tips and ideas on how you can support this movement, how you can continue this movement forward. So really, really encourage you to take the pledge, the 25 by 2025 pledge. Johanna just dropped that link into into the chat. Thank you for that, Johanna. And once you take the pledge, you're going to catch the latest news. That is my only dad joke for the day. I feel really good that I kept it to one. But we're going to make sure that you know about workshops and presentations coming up, any new learning, any resources, and of course, announcements and updates for the 25 by 2025 program. I'm going to play this video really quick. So this is our update video, because the other thing that you can help us do is share this update video. So let's see what it says.
Nearly half of domestic violence survivors have to make the choice between safety and bringing their pets with them to shelter. We believe no one should have to choose between safety and their pets.
Over the past year, our impact has reached new highs thanks to the multifaceted approach of our coaching program and the launch of our impactful 25 by 25 campaign. This campaign, designed to raise awareness about the pressing need for pet-friendly shelters across the U.S., has helped us be crucial drivers of change.
Since 2016, we've increased the percentage of pet-friendly shelters from 6% to just under 19%. And we have our sights set for 25% by 2025. The urgency and momentum for pet-friendly housing is escalating. We invite you to visit 25by2025.org to learn more about how you can help 25% of domestic violence shelters in the U.S. become pet-friendly by 2025.
Awesome. There you go. So I think, Johanna, if you wouldn't mind dropping that, there you go. Look at that. So she just dropped the link in for the YouTube channel. We'll be sharing it on social as well, but would, really, really appreciate your help in sharing that far and wide. And of course, we want to give a big thank you to our partners at PetSmart Charities for helping make 25 by 2025, the amazing campaign that it is. And of course, want to thank our partners at Purina and the Purple Leash Project for supporting this effort as well. It really does take a community for us. This is my contact information, so please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. Just want to chat about it. We've got lots of support to help, you and your community in this process. And then finally, I'm going to leave this question up on the screen for just a few minutes. I'll stop sharing my screen in a moment, but would love to know something that you might be taking away from today's time together. And I know we are bumping up on time. I'm happy to stick around. Were there any questions that came in, Johanna? I kind of kept an eye on things, but I'm not sure if I missed anything.
Just want to shout out Anne from NorCal. She was asking that there are different .org related to this issue, not separate 501c3s, but donations for 25 by 2025. I've shared it in the chat. Can go to the link above. And another comment from Vicki Deisner in Ohio. AWI is completing projects about marketing all grants available to TV and HS shelters without safe havens. Everyone join us in other states. So
I love it. Yeah, thanks, Vicki. I'm so glad that you're here. And it is pretty exciting to see. So there's a few different states that are taking up this work as well. Arizona, their state coalition has been engaged in this work for a few years, since really the release of the PAWS Act federal funding for domestic violence shelters. Maine has been for a few years kind of quietly working towards becoming entirely pet friendly or having pet housing resources at every state. New Jersey's kind of dabbling in some thoughts around that. And so it is really, really exciting. And I love it when states kind of take this work on too, because, a domestic violence shelter, it may not always be the safest option for them to go to the shelter in their community. And so they may need to work on getting moved to another shelter, you know, near them or in that state. And so it's really great then when the entire state and that surrounding area is able to offer pet housing resources. So love the work that's happening in various states around the country.
Katie?
Yep.
This is Vicky. Can I share something else that I think is some good news? I would share that the International Association of Veterinary and Social Workers is having their worldwide conference in Cleveland this September. Who knew? And there's going to be a lot of issues about the link and opportunities for safe havens and other things covered. But some good news is some of the folks coming are from UK and other countries that Phil and I have been working with. And last year we went to Lisbon because who knew there was an opportunity to talk about cross-reporting legislation that Ohio got through that is ending up being a model. And Ohio is never a model in anything. Usually, I hate to say that, but you know, I really want to compliment RedRover because you guys take such a, you know, out of the box approach to things and thinking, you know, what can we do to move things? And, you know, one thing that was brought up is what we did in Ohio, which doesn't seem to me out of the box, was we ran cross-reporting, mandated cross-reporting with fines if you did, you know, report on animal abuse. But we did training at the same time to social workers and law enforcement and therapists and counselors and veterinarians and got everybody mandated and nobody had a problem because they understood the link. And the interesting thing is the human services got it more than the humane services.
Yeah, yeah.
But you know, the thing is we need to think out of the box about these things and how do we, you know, get everybody on board. And you guys have been a leader in the country on that. So thank you so very much.
Oh my gosh, thanks, Vicky. And you know, truly thanks for all that you and AWI are doing in the state of Ohio. And you know, you're absolutely right. Like this is becoming a worldwide movement. You know, we've been supporting some efforts up in Canada, you know, and there's just conversations popping up everywhere. And so it's very, very exciting, I think, to see this moving forward. And the truth is, and you know, Vicky called it out, like we tend to get really siloed. You know, if we're coming from the human services world or the animal services world, if we're veterinarians, if we're law enforcement, we tend to get really siloed in our work. And there's good reasons for that. And, you know, historically we've done it. It can be hard to break away from it. But the truth of the matter is we're all serving the exact same population of people and pets. And so the more that we can talk to each other and provide these holistic support, the better, I think, communities we're going to be able to create. So very awesome. Thank you, Vicky. I am happy to stick around if folks just want to continue the conversation. I think we can go ahead and stop the recording. But if folks have questions, comments, I'm happy to stick around.
I have a favor to